You joined us for this episode of Stay Curious. And here with us today is Nick Thomas. How are you doing, Nick Thomas?
Real fine. Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you. 35 years? Yeah, thank you. Nick, for 35 years, has been a main educator out there at Kennedy Center Visitors Complex. And thank you for co-host or guest hosting for me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Well, it was a lot of, I've watched it, and man, anything you want to know about Wally Schirra, go check out your program, because it was on the 60th anniversary of Wally's Sigma 7 flight, and what a great guy he was, and it was a joy to hear you share some of the personal stories there, Nick.
Wonderful man, wonderful guy.
And that's what we love about Nick, embracing our nonprofit here at the American Space Museum. For more than 20 years, we have been celebrating the birth of the American space age right here, Nick, in its delivery room, Brevard County.
I was telling my friends that you called Brevard County the cradle of American manned spaceflight, and I think that's probably one of the best descriptions I've ever heard.
Well, thank you. Well, it is, and no doubt about it. We've got 35 handprints of astronauts in bronze, 3 blocks from us at Spaceview Park from the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo era. That's how the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation started. The American Space Museum is our nonprofit appendage to that. And incredibly, my co-producer Marty Winkle and I, we've done over 640 episodes of this in 2.5 years, born out of the pandemic. We never envisioned it would attract wonderful people like Nick Thomas here to our program.
And people like John Harrington and Charlie Walker, and hopefully more beyond that.
Absolutely. We've enjoyed a lot of astronauts. John Harrington, thank you for being a guest on Stay Curious. We aired that show last Friday. You had him out there 6 days. Yeah. Tell him what you do out there as the astronaut wrangler, Nick.
Well, we are responsible for 3 different presentations that rotate twice a day. We have the Chat with an Astronaut, which is a ticketed event where people can basically sit with the astronaut and ask questions one-on-one. We also have the theater presentation that we call Astronaut Encounter, and the last event that we do is the autograph opportunity. So we cycle 2 different autograph opportunities, one at the second floor of the gift shop and the other one at the gift shop located at Atlantis. So throughout the day, people who are out there visiting us have the opportunity to see and learn from an astronaut, and as I like to say, learn the history from the people who made it.
Boy, ain't that something. That used to be actually one of the American Space Museum's phrases, was history from the people who made it.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those of you local or going to be vacationing this week here in our Florida Space Coast, who's the astronaut du jour this week?
Well, Rick Heeb is with us. And Rick, among other things, flew on STS-41 with our friend Bruce Melnick.
Yes.
And conducted that rescue of the Intelsat 6 satellite and that daring 3-astronaut spacewalk out in the payload bay. So Rick is with us this week, and he's going to be telling some stories and meeting some people and signing some autographs and spending some time with the folks.
Now, you've done this a long time. Rick's been out there before, right?
Yeah, this is Rick's second go-around. He's one of our new guys in the office. And he tells some wonderful stories and brings some great experience to it. And people will be surprised if you see spacewalkers on television and you think, okay, maybe average-sized guy. Rick's built like a football player.
Okay.
Yeah, he is a big guy, and you need somebody like that when you're turning a wrench in zero-G.
That must be interesting, because there's been a lot of astronauts that do this pretty regularly with you. Yeah. And then there's some that just maybe once or twice you've done it out there. But imagine Bruce Melnick picking all his crew members here for a 49. He's done a great job.
It worked out real well.
Kathy Thornton was there with you the other day.
Yeah, and she'll be coming back too in the next month or so. And we've expanded the office now to the point where we have 40 men and women in the Astronaut Encounter office now. And we enjoy all their presentations because there are different stories, as many different stories as there are astronauts, and they all bring in an incredible aura to the presentations, and it's always a lot of fun. And people say, "Don't you get tired of hearing the same stories over?" And no, I don't.
No.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Well, I was coming out there 5 years. I've been down here. I saw you occasionally out there. He is an astronaut wrangler. Even Astronaut Harrington said, he won't let him autograph or take pictures except at certain things. And And he said he kind of made you mad, or you got a dirty look from you when he did do an autograph by someone in line. But their time and your timeline and so forth.
It's critical.
I get it. You really have to.
Absolutely.
You're never. He's never mean to anybody, but he's focused on what he does out there, folks, and he does a great job. But you have to be that way because you got people that are astronauts. There's 592 people in the history of the human race who could say they orbited Earth.
Now it is up past 650.
Well, that's the suborbital people involved there.
Well,
we'll compare notes on that.
John, as a matter of fact, has an excellent slide.
Yes,
to break down out of 180 billion people to how many have flown in space, to how many have spacewalked, to how many have gone to the moon, and how many have worked on the moon. So it's
over
pretty,
650.
It's pretty humbling.
It is. It is. Very few people have done that. And that's why we're privileged to bathe in their aura a little bit once in a while.
And help them tell the story and get the story out to not only the men and women who are alive when it was happening, but the young people who are trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And they are the astronauts proved to be a very potent incentive and a very potent inspiration for the young people.
Yeah, Harrington was a college dropout with like a 1.7, he admitted, right?
Great. He spent more time climbing rocks than he did studying.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He did. So, we're Nick, thank you for wanting to be regularly on here. Stay Curious. Marty, we've got a question there.
Yeah, we have a question from Nick. I'm sorry, I got Nick on the mind. William Whiting. Any idea when the Cape Canaveral Space Force, Air Force Space and Missile Museum, LC-26, will reopen?
We are still waiting for word on that. It's very slow in that regard when you're working with the bureaucracy that controls that sort of thing. So regretfully, I do not have a date for when that tour will resume.
Well, we'll announce that on here when that does happen, William Whiting.
Absolutely.
William's waiting to move into one of those new condos across from Titusville High School. Okay. So you find that out for him, he might invite us up there to watch a rocket launch, Nick.
Sit on the patio and have a Mai Tai and enjoy the launch.
He's in Michigan, so he'll be freezing pretty soon when I come down here. But William, thank you for staying curious with us today. We have got... let's have a little bit of Artemis update here with a original work of art from our friend Chris Calley. Hey, Chris, look at this beautiful piece of work.
Gorgeous.
You know who Chris is? His father, Paul Calley.
Right.
One of the few early Apollo artists. Well, he was Gemini. Paul Calley went out there.
So much of Paul's stuff is in our art collection.
Absolutely. And now Chris look at what he does with these beautiful collages there.
Yeah,
that's a Mark Usiak photograph of Artemis.
Okay.
So what's the latest on that, Nick?
Well, right now, driving toward a launch date of November the 12th. That would probably put us out at the pad on the 7th of November. That's the good news.
November 12th, is that that's a Saturday.
I would have to look at the calendar.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
But the bad news, if you want to call it that, is this launch is going to take place at 11:55 p.m. Our launch window is going to be 24 minutes long that night. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong column here. 12:07 a.m. liftoff with a 69-minute long launch window. We have
the 14th.
Yeah, the 14th. I'm sorry. Yeah. And we have opportunities from the 14th through the 27th. And so we're looking at the 14th right now.
That is a Sunday night, Monday morning, 12:07. Okay. So what a zoo that'll be over at Spaceview Park.
It's going to be a bit of an antler dance, but we'll be ready for it.
Yeah, he'll be ready for it. Well, how does the flow? So this is etched in stone, right?
Well, this is the launch date that's been
as much
posted
as they
by
can
NASA.
etch it in
as
stone,
long
yeah.
as much as you
maybe
can
etched in butter might be the better way to put it.
Notwithstanding weather or technical issues or hydrogen systems and so forth, but it's all part of it, and everybody who's involved in it understands that you go out there with every intention of launching, but if you don't have everything in a row, you ain't going.
After all, what does the great launch director Mike Leinbach tell us his job was?
Yeah, his job was to say no.
To keep it on the ground as long as
prove to me that we can launch.
Yep. And he launched 37 space shuttles there at the end of the program. Well, we've got a couple birthdays. Anything else about Artemis before I get to these birthdays?
No, I don't think.
Drop a pen there.
I don't think so. We've got.
Any advice to people that want to come that weekend?
Wow, get here early, and I mean early, because I think it's going to be a situation much like we had for the first and second launch attempts. People are going to want to see this vehicle go. 8.8 million pounds of thrust, more impressive, more powerful than the Saturn V moon rocket. I mean, who would not want to see that? And I expect that we are going to have crowds all along the Space Coast, in Titusville, in Merritt Island, Cocoa Beach. I think this is going to be, even if we scrub again, people will come back with this, because this is just such an incredible lifetime experience.
That was a fun scrub, by the way. That with a lot of people. But at night, I don't mind it at night. Marty, what'd that Saturn V rocket look like in Apollo 17 launching at night?
Oh, it was just gorgeous.
And you know how brightly they burn. So we're going to be seeing light levels and sound levels out there such as we have not seen, I think, ever.
Yeah.
Certainly not from the Space Center.
Well, we'll have our arms wrapped around that and get you on here beforehand, of course, to give us another update yesterday. Nick, we've got a couple birthdays. You know we love celebrating astronaut birthdays on Stay Curious. We have got Bill Anders. Was born today. There's two astronauts share a birthday. Bill Anders shares it with Dr. Mae Jemison. So he is 89 years old. And Jim Lovell on Apollo 8. And his only flight, he was born, like I said, in that's what the look that I told you about. That this is a man confident and has no money problems.
Well, you know, Al Worden said in his book, he said, Bill likes to project the Curtis LeMay tough guy Air Force officer, but in reality, he has got a heart of gold. He is chairman, of course, of the Bill Anders Foundation. And God bless him, he and his wife Valerie got married in 1955.
Wow.
They have 6 children, and they are still going strong. So,
one of the few Apollo marriages that survived in there. We'll talk some more about him, because I've got some questions that Nick knows a little about him. But born in Hong Kong, I don't know where in America he actually set roots down as a youth. I didn't dig all that information out, but we'll talk a little bit more about Bill Anders. Mae Jemison, there's a picture of her in training, the first African-American woman to go to space on STS-47 in 1992, one of our shuttles of September. And there she is on the lecture circuit here not too long ago. Born in Decatur, Alabama, 1956. So she's 66 years old. So she's in her golden years. She founded a technology research company, and she was on Star Trek, and she's still she was on the Next Generation Star Trek, I believe, there. So don't think she's ever talked out the visitors complex.
No, she hasn't. She hasn't been out with us.
But we wish a happy birthday to Mae Jemison, and like all of our astronauts, Nick, from our shuttle era, and those, God bless them, that are left from Apollo era, they're in communities doing wonderful things to promote space, aren't they?
Well, it's a remarkable thing that I think the one thing they all have in common is the fact that they realize the privileged position they are in, the things that they've been able to see and experience, and they have they feel an obligation to pass this on to future generations, to inspire the young people and some of the people my age too.
Yeah, right.
And they all have ways of doing that, foundations and things of that nature, Science Center participation and so forth. But they're all highly committed to reaching out to the future generations to inspire the young people to join in careers such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's very inspiring to be a part of that. And of course, the ability to talk to folks face to face who have watched this program all their lives, and here they are, they have a chance to meet an astronaut, and it's always exciting. Well, you've seen it. you've seen it where people come up to the autograph table and get a chance to spend some time and say hello. It is very inspiring.
Saw a little girl sing a song.
That's right.
To Guy Gardner.
That's right.
I mean, it's a beautiful, warm thing, and I'm sure these guys get to men and women when they come and visit the County Visitors Complex and do the program there. Sometimes they're not an astronaut 50 weeks a year, are they?
No.
I'm thinking like McCulley and Jim Adamson are pretty under the radar gentlemen.
I think everyone finds their own path and things to do. And well, for instance, Bill Anders, who could have very easily gone on to a lunar landing command, chose another path. Mm-hmm. So I think everyone chooses their path, but they're still able to find a career and a life that has meaning and has purpose. And that's what it's all about for all of us.
Well, we appreciate all the astronauts do out there in their communities, and we want to feature one mission of Rocktober. October's got 12 shuttle missions, Nick. And one of the early ones launched on October 5th, 1984, was STS-41-G.
41 Golf.
Would you explain that the alphabet soup that we got involved in? 41G means what?
41G, let's see, that would have been first quarter of 1984, I believe, and the G was also had to do with the time of the year that it was launched.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, I think you'd have to be an archaeologist to dig down and figure that whole thing out.
You do know the one
one meant Kennedy Space Center, and two would have been out in California, Vandenberg, right? Yeah, Slick 6.
Which Air Force was considering buying Discovery outright and flying military payloads from Slick 6 at Vandenberg.
Behind the scenes, Discovery was being called the Blue Shuttle. Because up until 51,
Air Force Blue,
until 51L, it was pretty much written in the stars that they were going to get a shuttle of their own to launch from Vandenberg. Yeah. And I've had the pleasure of talking to two of the men who were involved, who would have been involved in those flights, Jerry Ross and Guy Gardner, and the payloads that they would have been carrying would have carried a liquid fuel booster rocket, a booster rocket carrying liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, which was a very dangerous thing to do.
Like a Centaur.
Yeah, exactly. It was a Centaur upper stage.
Right, yes.
And they were going to carry that in the payload bay, and Jerry Ross was seated in that seat behind the pilot, and to his right he had a console and a CRT, and he had to monitor the temperatures and pressures of those two propellants. And if either one of them had inched out of tolerance one way or another, he had to hit the switch and vent that fuel out of the Atlas Centaur. So that would have been a real gut thumper. And I think a lot of guys breathed a big sigh of relief when the Atlas Centaur program was discontinued after 51L.
Yeah, in the shuttle there. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a very cool crew. I love the first third of the shuttle. I call up to 51 to 25. Yeah. The first third of it, of the 135 missions. Really pioneered things that we couldn't do.
All the things we did in that time frame.
Yeah,
remarkable.
And this crew here is an all-star crew. You better believe it there. Yeah. We've got Bob Crippen doing his second flight of 1984. I find that to be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
He was the crew commander of STS-41-C. As I look at my scroll here, my shuttle scroll, in April, he flew Challenger, April 6th. That was the long duration exposure facility. And then 6 months later, he is on this important mission with Sally Ride, her second flight, John McBride. Yep. We'll talk about John here in a minute. Kathy Sullivan, her first flight, she was going to do a space walk. Lisma, Garneau, and Scully Powers there.
Our first Canadian in space and our first Australian in space.
Here was the beautiful launch from the chase plane.
Oh, yeah, isn't that gorgeous?
I love it, breaking through the clouds and you see up there, and that's probably 30 seconds into flight, something like that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it was John said when you're up at that altitude and you could see out, you started to pitch over, and you were advancing on the Terminator, the line between daylight and darkness.
Yeah.
And that was, a pretty remarkable thing to see. 45 seconds to a minute and a half into ascent.
And John McBride, we're going to see some pictures of him in a minute, but he was kind of snake bit by the whole Challenger thing because he was going to be a one-time pilot and a one-time commander.
Well, he would have been a commander of a flight that would have followed 51L, but after the accident, he was contacted by the White House, and he was asked to be the congressional liaison. And when the White House asks you something, that is not a request. You say, yes, sir, and there you go. But he spent years up on Capitol Hill talking to the congressmen and so forth, and afterwards made a decision to turn around and run for governor of West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
I know he's from Beckley area. He didn't win, though.
Unfortunately not. Or actually, if you look back in hindsight, I think John was fortunate that he didn't get all wrapped up in that.
I just put this patch in of Garneau, the first Canadian astronaut. They would do, the usual patches of the missions, but they had some special ones there. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like this, and just to brag about our Canadian friends.
And, it's
we have a Canadian who's going to talk at the astronaut encounter here this month, right?
Yeah, Bob Thirst, Dr. Bob Thirst.
You told me not to miss him.
Don't miss him because he brings some tremendous insight into the program. And particularly from the medical side of things. He gives a very interesting talk, and clearly he enjoys talking to the people, and they enjoy talking to him.
All right, talking about Thurston there, and Garneau, of course, they know each other.
And, it's amazing when you talk about Mark Garneau, everybody remembers Chris Hadfield, but everybody, Mark Garneau was the first Canadian.
Right, there you
it's
go.
Sort of like Alan Shepard and John Glenn all over again.
Any guy with the guitar that shows up, the girls are all going to love him, and then the guys are going to be jealous until they hear how good he is. Right? Marty, who's watching Stay Curious today? Give us a shout out there.
We got a slew of people.
Great. Hey, we know they want to hear from Nick Thomas. Yeah. They want to hear from me, that's for sure.
Okay, we have Doug Forrest.
Hey, Doug.
And Mark Uziak.
Great artist, that pencil artist, right, Doug. Yeah.
Chris Calley's watching.
Chris.
Carlton
Chris.
Bailey.
Hello, Carlton. You still on probation?
Yeah.
Bruno Lecadone. Robert Law, Terry Rogers, Inosea, William Whiting, Chalazan, Dave Stange, Martin Azol, Mensha.
Good.
I can't pronounce this one.
And other unpronounceable names.
Yeah. Kellyanne, Gail Marshall, Ashley Barnes, Tony Bridges, Buck Bailey. That's Buck Bailey.
Oh, Buck Bailey. That's Carlton's pseudonym there. Yeah, Buck Bailey.
Alejandro.
That's one of his squirrels.
Alejandro Ferris. I don't want to attempt it. Rachel Grillet. Pam Dunn Cooper. I got that name right.
Yeah. Thank you for watching.
Manuel Cesarini. Angela Butler, Daniel DeJong.
Daniel DeJong, yep. DeLong. He's the airline pilot that's been in here.
Well, welcome everyone.
Yeah, welcome everybody here. Stay Curious. Cynthia Rossi, I mailed your package off today too, by the way. Here, let's look at the crew going. Thank you everyone for watching Stay Curious, and we appreciate everybody telling their friends to watch it on YouTube. We make a nickel or something a show on there. But here's that crew in space, quite an all-star crew. They're in the, tell us left to right in the back there. You know who they are.
Starting on the bottom row from left to right, we've got Big John McBride, who was a pilot for 41 Golf. Next to him, Sally Ride, making her second flight into space. Next to Sally is Kathy Sullivan, making her first flight into space and on to become the first American woman to walk in space. Next to her, her spacewalking partner, Dave Liesma, Wizard. I'll tell you some stories about Wizard sometime.
Okay.
And up on the top row, we've got Paul Scully Power, who's our first Australian to fly in space. Up in the center is Bob Crippen, the commander. And next to Bob is Mark Garneau, the first Canadian to fly in space.
Cliff Watson, hello to you in Pomona, Australia. I know you may have met Scully Powers a couple times there. The first guy to wear a beard to space too, I think, wasn't he, Nick?
I think he might have been the first.
Or to go up with one.
I think he might have been. I think you might be right.
Yeah. And we've got handprints in bronze of 3 of those astronauts.
Yeah, we got
Sally and
Crip and Sally and Big John.
No, we've got Kathy.
Oh, Kathy. Okay.
Yeah, I wish we had Big John.
Yeah.
Don't know why we got that's in there. We call him Big John because his height is
Big guy, over 6 feet tall.
yeah, one of the few early
Yeah.
guys that was
Yeah.
over 6 feet tall. Crip's not very tall, is he?
Crip's
I've never stood
Crip-
next to him.
Crip is about my height,
Okay.
about 5'10", 5'11".
In there, a great mission here. Never saw this picture before of Kathy and Sally.
Yep.
That's a I forget what that was all about. Let's see. That was oddly enough, out of 7 astronauts, first time they flew 7, by the way, too. 5 were rookies. Only Crip and Sally Ride had been to space before. In there. And there is Leesma with Crip.
Crip, right?
Now, what were you calling him?
Wizard.
Wizard.
Dave flew as a weapons systems officer in the United States Navy, flying off aircraft carriers, and I had the opportunity to fly with one of his pilots when I was flying T-34s in Georgia. And we were talking about Dave, and he told me that Dave's call sign was Wizard. And the reason he was called that was the pilot told me, he said, Dave could make those radars jump up on their hind legs and bark. He was well versed in that technology. So subsequently, several years later, when I got a chance to meet Dave, I told him that story, and I said, "Yeah, your pilot said you could make those radars jump up and bark." And Dave kind of smiled and he said, "Well, it depended upon how big the dog in the front seat was."
Cool. That's cool. Good story.
But he more than lived up to his name, knowing the systems on that vehicle and certainly knowing the GPCs, the general purpose computers, and so forth. He was a whiz, and to be teamed with Crippen, who in the pilot office of the shuttle was known to be the best versed in the computers on the shuttle. I mean, with a couple of guys like that on board, there's not a whole lot of impossible in your vocabulary.
There you go. We're going to talk more about Crip here in just a minute. I love this picture when I was looking at 41G. Not sure what the window is there. You probably know, but that's pad 39B right there.
Yeah, I would have
and
to.
A and B are right there.
Yeah, I would have to check with Big John about that circle, because Big John, as pilot, was responsible for photography, both still photography and motion picture photography, and John handled the IMAX camera for STS-41 Golf. And that footage from that mission made up a large part of the IMAX movie known as The Dream is Alive. Oh. So if you see The Dream is Alive, 90% of that stuff was shot by McBride on the IMAX camera.
And I wonder what port that was looking out. I'm trying to think of any round ports on there. And
the only round window on board the vehicle was the hatch window.
Yeah.
And that window was used. That was the one window in the vehicle that was not screened against the ultraviolet rays of the sun. They wanted to use that window specifically for unfiltered photography, so that might be where it's from.
There, but that's
to be sure, I'd have to
there and Rocket Row, and
yeah,
I've never seen that picture before. And then we landed her down on Kennedy Space Center
KSC,
here.
runway 33.
One of the early ones there, and I love those aerials from the T-38 chase plane.
Runway 33, and Crip just nailed it.
He did, didn't he? Marty, comment?
Question? Yeah, Mark Usack said that's looking out the side entry hatch window.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
There we go there. Mark's not happy it's a night launch.
Oh, I know.
He wants to see all the markings.
I'd like a daylight launch too, but what I like more than anything is a launch and a successful
for our
mission.
We're talking about there. So, well, there you are with John McBride, and I know you got to know John really well. Tell everybody why.
Yeah, I got to work for John over at KSC at the astronaut office. And
he was the chief astronaut.
He was the chief of the astronaut encounter office. Mm-hmm. But to me, the real milestone of John's career at the Visitors Complex was his involvement in the Atlantis display. Now, when he came on board, he pretty much set everybody straight, telling them, don't think that you've got a God-given right to one of these orbiters, because the competition and the bidding is going to be tough. So you are going to have to present one hell of a good presentation, display, et cetera, which they did. So whenever you go over to see Atlantis at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, as you walk by that vehicle, give a little tip of the hat to McBride, because he was a big driving force behind the quality of that presentation. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I've seen Discovery. I've not seen Endeavor in California, but
back when I was working.
Oh my gosh, it is such a goose. My hair rises every time I see it. It's just an amazing the way it's suspended in the air, and
back when I was working,
the attack angle of it coming in.
Back when I was working for John over at KSCVIC, my nickname for him was Skipper, because he's captain of the ship, so I say Skipper. And somebody heard me one day say, "You calling John Skipper?" I said, "Yeah, that's his nickname." He says, "That would make you Gilligan then, wouldn't it?" I said, "Yeah, whatever you want."
Well, he's proud of his West Virginia heritage.
Oh, absolutely.
You know that.
Absolutely. And he was also a good friend of John Denver.
Oh,
he
was.
and John Denver were good friends. So.
John Denver wanted to be the first civilian in space. But he really lobbied for that hard, too.
Yeah.
And we saw his son, John, in the museum not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
J2, J squared.
Yep. And he told him Dad's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
He had a little health thing back in the COVID days, I think, going, but he's doing great.
Recently came back from Italy.
Yes.
So
good. He's back, because son said he was on Italy having a big time for like 3 months.
Buongiorno, Skipper.
Buongiorno, Skipper. There. Love to get. He has been a great supporter of our museum, and you know that he and Charlie Mars, our godfather, go way back. And
again,
God bless you, John, for all you've done for our museum.
Yeah, John is an exemplar of that mindset I told you about the absolute determination to give something back to the community, and also to raise awareness of manned spaceflight in the United States.
And another one of this 41G crew that you know very personally
Skipper,
there,
yeah.
A few years ago. I believe he's 86 years old now, just had a birthday last month.
Yeah, I heard from him, sent him a note for his birthday, and he wrote back. And I sent him this picture, and he wrote back, he said, "Yeah, I was younger in that picture." But he's living the life of a country squire in Palm Beach.
Is he? As he so richly deserves.
And at that event that you see there, he told a wonderful story. People asked the panel, were you ever the victim of a practical joke? And Cripp said, "Yeah, not in space, but on the ground." And what had happened was Cripp was supporting approach and landing test 2 with Engel and Truly out at Edwards Air Force Base. And he came into Edwards one day. Landon pulled up onto the ramp and opened up the canopy of the T-38. And all of a sudden he looks over in front of him, and here comes this golf cart with Joe Engel and a security guard. And the security guard was a female, and she was drop dead gorgeous. So the cart pulls up to the T-38, and the girl gets out of the cart and walks up the ladder to the T-38 cockpit and hands Crippen a beer. And before he can say thank you, out come the handcuffs. One on the wrist, one on the rail. She takes the beer away, and she says, "Don't you know consuming alcohol on a federal installation is illegal?" So she went down and got back in the cart, and she and Joe Henry took off. And Big John was with me when Cripp told that story, and Big John leaned over to me and said, "I just want to know what happened when she brought the key back."
Yeah, exactly. She ran off with the key. There's a couple of that. That's a good story.
Again, Crippen is one of the Mount Rushmore guys of the not only the shuttle program, but the space program overall.
Yeah, a good way to put it.
So closely identified with that first flight, and basically in on the ground floor on the development of that vehicle. As I said, had an understanding of those GPCs that just rivaled anyone, and just an excellent choice for a shuttle commander. He's a naval aviator, and just through and through a fine test pilot and a fine gentleman.
Yeah, we have his SMEET outfit here.
Yeah.
He was part of the Apollo test project. Not
Skylab.
The SMEET was the
Skylab.
Skylab, where they simulated being in space for 28 days.
Yeah.
And we have his handprints here, too,
Right.
in there. And he's done a lot for our museum also.
Great
very,
guy.
very
Great guy.
involved. And I don't know why you threw that picture in there, but
I had the pleasure of taking that picture of Crip at the rollout for STS-26, which was on the 4th of July of, goodness gracious, how long has it been? 1987 or 88, I can't remember. But he was out there, he sees, talking to the press. And at that time, Crip was the chairman of our mission management team, which was a new position that was created after 51L. So it was his ultimate responsibility to oversee the whole preparation for launch sequence and to give his recommendation of go or no go to the launch director. Mm-hmm. So again, he was a powerful driving force in this program, not just in the cockpit, but in the management level and across the board. Just as I say, can't say enough good things about Crip and what he's done for us. He's one of the great heroes of this program.
And he was a Kennedy Space Center director for a couple
of years.
He was
CD for Kennedy
promoted
Space
Hugh
Center.
Harris to
to
director of the Public Information Office there. But he was a good director too there in that period there. So, and Big John here. There you go.
Oh yeah. Now the
one
thing
last
about,
picture of these guys, and then we'll get into talking about Bill Anders here.
The thing about Big John was, you just have to dig deep to find pictures of John on that mission, because 9 times out of 10 he was a photographer. So fortunately, we were able to find some pictures of him, and I love this one up on the aft flight deck. He's over by the RMS station, and John is remarkable in that he is able to reach out and touch people in a way when he's doing a presentation that's unlike anyone else. John carries such a pride and joy in what he has done. And I'll tell you, there have been some instances of astronauts who have maybe flown 3, 4, maybe 5 missions. John has flown 1 mission, but John carries a pride and an excitement for that 1 mission that a lot of guys with multi-missions don't have. He is a remarkable fellow. He is, in the terms of test piloting, he is high speed and low drag. He is a naval aviator through and through. Among his other exploits, he recovered from a very dire emergency taking off from an aircraft carrier in an F-4 Phantom when he pulled some foreign object debris into his engine, shut that engine down, lost the hydraulics. I mean, everything went south in a hurry, but he was able to recover that plane, basically skimming across the water before he was able to bring that vehicle back under control and get it up and bring it back around to the aircraft carrier. But you hear John talk about it, and it was just like, well, I went down to the corner for a pack of cigarettes.
Quick story I've heard him tell, and you may have heard him tell, was when he was selected as an astronaut, he was in one of those aerobatic teams for the Navy, and he landed, he said, for the last time with this team in Texas, I think it was, and the canopy went back, and he took his helmet off, and the ladder comes up there for him to get down, and when he looked down to go to the ladder, there was John Young waiting for him, and said, "Welcome to the Astronaut Corps."
Isn't that something? You
never heard him tell that story?
No.
Yeah, he told that story at I believe at Young's Wake. I'm sure it was at Young's Wake out there in front of the Astronaut Memorial.
If you listen to STS-1 landing out at Edwards Air Force Base, John was the chief chase pilot, and you can hear John counting down how many feet before touchdown, and then after the nose gear touches down, you hear John say, "Welcome home, Skipper." And that's McBride through and through. He's just a remarkable guy.
Yeah. Well, we hope to see you on Stay Curious, John, here, and look forward to seeing you anywhere here on the Space Coast. Well, we're going to end our little program here with Nick Thomas. Going to share a few little personal stories and other stories he's heard about William Allison Bill Anders, who's 89 years old today.
Happy birthday.
He, as we said, born October 17th, 1933, and part of, in my opinion, one of the American space flight that won the moon race for us, Apollo 8, without setting foot on the moon.
Yeah.
There he is getting ready. Talk a little bit about him and his crew there. One other crew still intact. That'd be Apollo 10, right?
Yeah, and right here we've got, Apollo 10's not intact. We did lose John Young and Gene Cernan.
Oh, no, I apologize. I'm thinking 9.
Okay.
With the Orbital Lunar Module 3. Marty's there.
So here we are on the Yorktown with the crew after they've been recovered. There's Frank Foreman at the microphone, Bill Anderson in the center, and Jim Lovell there off to the side. It is just hard to relate to people who weren't alive at the time what an incredible step this was. And I can remember hearing the countdown for the translunar injection burn on the S-4B. They fired the engine, they were on their way, and I remember distinctly going into the kitchen and telling my mother, we're going to the moon. I'll never forget that. And of course, when they were orbiting the moon and they read from the book of Genesis, that was just something that just still sends chills up and down my spine.
Well, we were teenagers back then.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You're in Daytona Beach, right? Going to high school in Daytona Beach. He's a local boy here. Yeah, I'll never forget it. Christmas Eve, watching that, and then the craters going by slowly, and they're reading. They chose the book of Genesis because they thought it was non-denominational, correct?
It was a story of creation.
In there.
And a wonderful story about the Apollo 8 mission. During the training, when they did the first training in the simulators, as they were getting ready to perform that, Frank Foreman told Bill Anders, I don't want to catch you looking out the window during launch. And Bill just chuckled and said, yeah, okay, Frank. He said, I'm serious. I don't want to catch you looking out the window during launch. Because Bill, as the LEM pilot, without a LEM, of course, Bill was a flight engineer on that flight, responsible for many systems, including the propellants, the fuel cells, and so forth. So on his seat, which was the far right-hand seat, Bill was very busy. But he said he did manage to squeak out a peek or two after they jettisoned the launch escape system and the ascent boost cover. So he got a couple of quick views out the window, but he stayed focused on his task.
And but one view here, he is getting suited up in the suit room. One view he did get captured that is famous. The first person to photograph the
Earth rising above the moon's limb. And if you go to YouTube and search it, you can hear the intercom conversations on board Apollo 8 when this happened. And literally, they're like, look at that. You see that? Oh, get a camera. You want color? I need color film. Where's the color film? And Lovell was saying, calm down, Anders, calm down.
Right,
and they finally found the color film cartridge. And Bill Anders, it's finally been revealed or expressed that Bill Anders was the one who took that beautiful picture of Earthrise.
Famous Earthrise.
Changed everyone's life. It made changes far beyond the space program. I mean, it changed our own perception of our planet, of our universe, and of ourselves. So thank you, Bill.
Yeah. From poets to photographers to religious people to scientists. The beautiful blue marble. Yeah. I think, though, it's shown as a horizontal shot. I think it was a vertical shot that as it was coming around.
That may very well
they were in there, but yes, I've read that transcript. They're all where's the color magazine for this Hasselblad on there? Yeah. But there's the crew there. Yeah. And you've got one last picture here.
Oh yes.
There to what's going on here?
This is Bill's last flight in the P-51 Mustang. This was in 2008. And as a pilot, you don't always know when your last flight is going to occur. But in this case, Bill did know. And just like your first flight, you are christened in one way or another. For my first solo flight, I had a container of ice water dumped on me.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, there are ceremonies for your last flight too, if it's a known time. And here we have Bill's son with the fire hose hosing down his dad after his last flight in the P-51 Mustang in 2008.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. We were getting a note here that McDivitt had passed away. I didn't know Jim McDivitt died last Thursday.
No.
At age 93, Mark Usiak was saying that. And
bless his heart.
You confirmed it there, Marty?
Wow.
Gee, I didn't. That went right by me. I've not seen anything on social media.
I was doing a tour with a father and son, and the young son was very, very interested in the lunar module. And when we came back to the main complex, went over to the restaurant, who's sitting in the corner but Jim McDivitt? So I went over and I said, General, we got a young man here. He's very big on the lunar module. Wonder if you might talk to him when you're finished. He said, yeah, I'd love to. So when he was finished, General motioned me over, and I brought the young boy over, and I told the boy, I said, you know that lunar module you saw over in the Saturn V Center? I said, well, meet the test pilot. And Jim just beamed, and he answered several questions about the lunar module. Jim was such a remarkable man, not only in his accomplishments as a pilot and an astronaut, but also as a human being. Truly a gentle man, and a man who I'm certainly going to miss. I'm terribly sorry to hear that we've lost him now.
Yeah, I mean, so under the radar. That's not right.
That's not right.
He was,
That's not right.
and I didn't see Collect Space or any of these user websites. I may have missed it, but
Yeah, Mark Cusack said it's a nice story on Collect Space.
okay, all right,
And as you mentioned earlier, not only an astronaut, but after his time on Apollo 9, he turned around and joined management, and he was manager of the Apollo program.
that's right.
And again, a firm hand
Jim
on the
McDivitt.
tiller, and working with Dr. Gilruth.
Apollo 9, Limb 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that was Jim's vehicle. And when you look back at it, Apollo 9, although kind of an unsung flight, Apollo 9 was a big risk. It's the first time we ever put two people in a spacecraft that was not capable of coming back home to the Earth.
yeah.
And a vehicle that literally had paper-thin walls. One of the pilots told me that you looked down at the hatch, and when the vehicle, of course, was pressurized, you could see the hatch bowed slightly outward. That's how thin that vehicle was, because it had to be absolutely lightweight. And they tell me, in retrospect, that the LEM was the noisiest spacecraft we ever flew, because of all that exposed plumbing and hardware and equipment. It wasn't all neatly packed away as it was in the command module and future spacecraft. It was all out there, and it put up a pretty good racket.
Remember that, Marty? Anyone's comment about that and post-mission things?
I haven't heard that, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
That it would be the most
A
noisy.
lot of fans and
Everything, all
pumps.
the fans and pumps, yeah.
But McDivitt, when he flew, he said it was less noisy than he expected.
Okay.
Yeah, your boss, Bill Waldron, we've had him on here many times, Grumman, lunar module engineer. He's got a great McDivitt story where at 3 a.m, McDivitt shows up in his bathrobe because he was staying at the ONC there, and he wanted to see the legs go out. He had in his mind, he wanted, because the legs were tucked in,
Right.
and there was pyrotechnics, right, Marty, that exploded the legs out. And so they set up a test for him and knocked it out, and Bill Waldron says that thing, he'd never seen it either. So they were all curious, and it just went out so beautifully and locked. And McDivitt turned around and said, okay, went back to bed. Marty, you remember that?
Yeah, but the pyrotechnics just released the leg so it could spring out.
Oh, they were spring loaded.
Yeah.
Okay, in there. So, well, we'll be doing a little program on Mr. Jim McDivitt here on Stay Curious. I guarantee you that.
Veteran of Gemini 4, first space flight with Ed White.
Taking those pictures of Ed White. He was the photographer on that. And, in there. So sorry to hear about his passing. That's how busy we get, Nick.
Yeah.
I was telling you, we're gratefully so busy at the American Space Museum, and it's people like you that have spread the word about our museum to make us busy. So we will, God bless Jim McDivitt out there, and we'll do a little homage to him on Stay Curious one of these days.
And
here.
if we
Maybe
have
we'll save some of that for you on your next appearance.
And
too.
if we have a quick chance, I would like to say hello to a couple of my former colleagues, former communicators.
Absolutely.
Monica Sayre and Billy Joe Clayton. I had the opportunity to have a reunion with them today out at the Visitors Complex, and it was wonderful to see them and to, just trade the stories. And we would go to exhibits. Where are you going to go? Well, let's go over to Gateway. And we'd go to Gateway. We just stood in there and kept telling stories to each other. Let's go over to the gift shop. We stood in there. We told stories. So it's like whenever we, you get together with folks in this business, as you're aware, it's just, one story after another. And Billy Joe said, well, we're nerds. And my reply to that is, no, we're not nerds. We're Charlie Spaceflight. As in, who are you, Charlie Spaceflight? Yeah. Charlie Spaceflight.
That's right. That's right. It's fascinating the stories that Nick and other people bring to us about these wonderful people and the science and the engineering behind all of this. Reminded again of our Artemis attempt here, November 14th. Chris Callie's beautiful montage there.
Yeah.
He's got the Mercury astronaut in the corner there.
You've got the whole heritage from top to bottom.
He
there.
certainly does there, and a few little Easter eggs thrown in there. I think that when you see this beautiful work of art. And Chris, thank you so much for embracing our museum.
Wonderful work
here just just like Nick Thomas has here. So, Marty, we got anything else to clean up for our Stay Curious program this week?
Nope, we're good to go.
Well, tomorrow we've got a treat for you. We're going to have a program that we recorded today with ESA Eurocom, Alex Carl. Alex has been on twice live and then twice from Europe, or 4 times live we've had him on. He was on the boat out there to pick up ESA astronaut Krista Ferretti and her 3 crewmates on Crew Dragon 4. So, what Alex was here today. We recorded that program for you to enjoy tomorrow. So, Marty, thank you for a great Streamlabs job. Thank you, Nick Thomas, for sharing your wonderful stories and embracing our museum. And on behalf of our museum, led by Karan Conklin, our executive director, I'm Mark Marquette saying we'll see you tomorrow with ESA Eurocom Alex Carl to bridge the space between us.